stadium is changing. The international players are signing, and we got some arbitration data to dig into on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Guardians. I want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I'm going to do everyone's favorite part of the show and introduce myself. Thank you to Cleveland Tex, who gave us 4 out of 5 stars, but said we are unemotional and boring. So I don't know what 4 out of 5 stars, and complained about this. Can we say again, like across the network, we are told to introduce ourselves every show. And if you listen to other podcasts, they introduce them. Like I listen to How Stuff Works. You always hear about Josh and Chuck at the start. You always hear their names because every podcast is potentially someone's first podcast. It's literally podcasting 101. You're supposed to introduce yourself every show because it could be someone's first one. I don't know why this is such a big deal. I want to thank everyone who does leave a review, though. Thank you for doing that, Cleveland Tex. I'm Jeff Ellis, one of your 2 co-hosts, formerly a draft and prospect writer. Now I've been here for many an episode. Justin?
Well, I guess I'll be boring and introduce myself too, because I've done less episodes than you have done. So maybe you know me elsewhere from the News Herald, the ESPN Sweet Spot, Guardians Baseball Insider, now the Next Year in Cleveland newsletter, many places, but getting more podcasting here with you. I'm trying to be as monotone and boring as I possibly can.
We are somehow more controversial than billionaire owners complaining about being poor and yelling at people.
We're going to talk about money today. We are going to talk about money.
But let's start off with the arbitration, which I thought was interesting. When you get right down to it, it was all back and forth, just like everyone expected. Shane Bieber took less than expected, and Zach Plesac got more. It's kind of weird when you look at it that way. Like, the arbitration estimates are a pretty good system. They never get it right on the nose because it's basically just a baseline of expectation. Civale 99 and Plesac all got little raises. Civale got 400,000. Like, he got a 30% increase over his expectations. So that was kind of surprising. Naylor was under, as I mentioned, Bieber was like 600 grand less than expected. The big one is Amed Rosario, who got 1.2 less than expected. I don't know to take anything from that. If this was like him, like really wanting to be here, I have no idea. But all in all, the expected estimates versus what everyone signed for, the Guardians saved almost $2 million when it was all said and done. I know it's been retweeted, Zach Meisel, many times about an $85 million payroll. I wish I had texted at him or responded to that and asked if that includes like the bonus money that they don't have to pay, like that comes out of that pool that gets put together, like, how Quan and everyone, because it was like, sure. So arbitration estimates came in about 2 million less when they did their money, but then they got about 2 million more that they don't have to pay. So it's like the 85 million counting those bonuses or not counting those bonuses. But I thought it was interesting. The Amed one was a little mind-boggling. Plesac getting more when he had just an awful year. Civale getting the high percentage more, and then Bieber getting less stood out. Like, Naylor wasn't a big drop, and 99, it wasn't a huge increase for him. But yeah, I thought it was interesting to watch them slowly funnel in on Friday.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That's the other thing too, is there was a period there where they were not avoiding arbitration with everybody. They obviously with arbitration with Trevor Bauer because he's Trevor Bauer. But I think like
to not go.
I know, yeah, just to make a statement. And then I want to say Tomlin and Pistano, they had a couple of cases with. There are some other guys in between there, but largely since the early 90s, Cleveland has avoided arbitration cases for a reason, and mostly for people who don't know why they do that, because arbitration cases can get ugly. Basically, what you're doing, if you're not familiar with the process, is the team submits what they think the player is worth, and the player's agent will submit what they think they're worth for the upcoming year. And if the two sides can't agree on like a median or whatever, they go to arbitration, which is court, and the team has to argue against the players, usually not there in person. I think Bauer might have been. I'm not sure.
Yes,
but
and he called it character assassination. Like for another reason why the front office and him didn't have the rosiest of history. He straight out said they tried to do character assassination in those arbitration meetings.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if character plays into it or not. We don't know what was said. He's going to claim what he said.
No, I mean, his claim was that they tried to say that like his jokes about, 420 and 69, because he wanted his contract to be all of those numbers because he's 12.
Right.
Was a negative effect to the franchise and things like that. He said that came up in the meeting. Like, I mean, he's one of the best pictures into it because he was very forthright about it. But like, that's everything gets brought up. And there was like a good decade where no one went to arbitration. It was a weird change when a few guys started going there. But yeah.
And he wasn't even the first. It was Vinny Pistano, I think, and then it was Josh Tomlin. So those were bizarre ones. But anyway, so if the teams can't agree on a price, they have to argue in court why the player's worth the money. So yeah, you get into it where some teams will have to say, well, this is why he's not worth what they're asking for, and it goes into stats. Although I find it interesting you can't use StatCast data, but that's probably because teams use their own internal analytics and batted ball data or pitch data and things like that, so they can't use publicly advanced stuff like that. But yeah, it ends up not being pretty in some cases when you tell a player you're not worth what you're asking for, and this is why you have to make a whole case. So it's ugly. But Shane Bieber, he got only $700,000 less than he was projected to get. Quantrill was $500,000 less. Naylor $200,000 less. Civale got $400,000 more. Plesac got $500,000 more, which wasn't that much. What did Karinchak got?
Plesac, $50,000 more.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, 50,000, not 500,000.
But again, the thing with Civale is it's a higher percentage. Like if you're looking at the percentage change, Civale had one of the biggest. I think Karinchak was like 1.5 instead of 1.4. It was like
he got 100,000 more, and then Rosario was the big one where he was projected to get 9 and he ended up with 7.8. So that was the big. But overall, except for Rosario, everybody was fairly close to the projections, which MLB Trade Rumors is good at. But and all that's based on too is statistical comps and how other players in that year are being paid across the league, like how pitchers in the same year as Plesac are being paid, and going by their stats. I think they go by stats a little bit, but I think mostly it's other pitchers his age and his year in terms of team control, right? That's mostly how it's based off of other players.
Yeah, it's similar.
Historical.
Models. Yeah, it's historical comp models. But yeah, I mean, like I said, for most of them, it was what you'd expect. Like I said, the only weird thing is, again, for me, I'm not even necessarily looking at like outside of Rosario, like 1.2 is a lot. $1 million off is a lot. But it's like, to me, what's interesting is, again, Civale, where it's a high percentage shift. Like, while, I think Bieber was 10.1 instead of, it was like 600,000 to 700,000. That's not a huge percentage shift, where Civale going from 2.2 to 2.6, that's a much higher percentage, which I know our friends who want us to be emotional and not about the nitty gritty love me talking about the percentage of salary. Bottom line, $2 million cheaper than expected, about $85 million, about half the Twins payroll, which, again, I don't want to be an owner hater here, but I am really looking forward to an ownership change where this team can at least just respectable levels. And I know I'm asking Avery to come at me tomorrow because I want this team to spend a little money, and he's going to pop up. I can't win no matter what I do. Someone's going to get mad, but it would be nice, to spend to keep some guys, lock a few up younger, maybe.
But you're not advocating for them to send stupid money. Like, if you look at the free agent pool right now, like you could say, like we've talked about Michael Fulmer and Andrew Chafin, like maybe those are good ads, but not for sure. You're not advocating for them to just go out there and pay whoever just for the sake of spending money. You're talking about investing in smart decisions, which is, like you said, trying to lock up Andres Gimenez, trying to lock up Tristan McKenzie. There is advocating for more payroll, and there's advocating for stupid money, like, oh, they should sign Javier Baez, or they should sign this free agent because I heard of him before. Like, you're not advocating for that. I'm not advocating for that. But they could spend $100 million on good players and extensions and not waste their money stupidly.
Yes.
It's all about spending. I mean, if they spend $100 million the right way, it's fine. We're not asking them to go out and make a Miguel Cabrera contract or Javi Baez contract.
Braves contracts, right? Like go do what the Braves did. Like just go do that. Like lock up all those guys young, like the Braves have done with Murphy, with Harris, with Strider. Like go do that. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be nice when, again, it's not half the payroll the Twins have. When it's not that they are. I mean, they still might be the lowest payroll team in this division. I'd have to go look.
Well, they're still the Twins. The Twins payroll is largely buoyed by the Carlos Correa contract now.
But even without it, I mean, they'd still be. And Carlos Correa is still what, 30 million odd. They would still be lapping the Guardians. But this seems like a perfect time here in the show to remember and remind you that we'll be coming back in a moment here and discussing the changes to the stadium, what we like, what we don't like. And then we're going to get into the international market, as well as MLB released a top right-handed list, top 10 right-hand prospects. The Guardians feature heavily on that list. So if you want to know about the newest Guardians and you want to know about some of the pitching in the future, make sure you are tuning in. Now let's discuss our good friends over at, hey, listen, we talked about them at the start of the show, and that would be Bet Online. Let me throw up our title sponsor bit there. Our good friends over at Bet Online is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the World Cup, we got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sportscasts, you can find those on Bet Online as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts. And again, I'm going to tell you, right now is the perfect time to maybe go look at World Baseball stuff, because it's in flux, and it's sometimes things that are not, don't get updated as often, but rosters are in flux. So go check that out with our friends at Bet Online today. Could be a chance to make a few bucks while things are in flux. Hey, I couldn't help the rhyme there. Changes to the stadium. So I'm going to jump out here and do everyone's second favorite thing of me hogging the mic. But when I look at these things, I know this is going to be like a weird take, but the second Ken Griffey Jr. baseball game was the only baseball game where I played a whole 162 games. And it didn't have any of the names. Like Albert Bell was Frank Liberty. I traded him to the Giants because he had left town for the Matt Williams equivalent, who I was very excited when he broke the home run record that year. But going through a lot of those stadiums, I kind of realized, like, as a kid, became favorites because they had something that stood out, like the cages at Old Tiger Stadium, the fountains in Kansas City, the buildings behind in Baltimore. And then there are the ones like, Seattle and Minnesota at the time, Houston, that were just boring domes. Like, it was amazing how many boring domes were in baseball in the 90s. And in a way, the Terrace Club was kind of that for Cleveland. It was that thing that was like different. That was an interesting feature that stood out with the glass. And as part of me, it's gonna be sad that I never got to go there. And this new area looks cool, but there's part of me that doesn't like this, just because I was like, that was the feature. That was the thing that really stood out. Like, you had a different look there that was unlike anything at any other stadium. I don't know. Am I wrong that this is like the first thing I focus on with this change?
I mean, it is the most notable thing outside of the shipping containers, which I'm sure we'll get into. And anybody listening too, if you have any thoughts on the stadium changes, we'd love to hear it, whether you tweet at us at Locked On or Locked Guardians or either one of our handles or below on YouTube. But you're absolutely right. I think it was a unique thing. It was a unique part of the ballpark that nobody had. It was one of their unique features that was kind of groundbreaking. I don't know that any of their team ever copied it either, but it was one of those, they called it white linen dining and indoor experience. I did get to go last year for the first time, actually, because part of it was, I guess we heard it was being taken down. I think it'll still be there for the upcoming season. So if you come home this summer,
I might. I mean, I typically come back once a summer, but I might go. Like, even if I can't go
be there, yeah,
during a game, if it's still open, I am going to try to go there. This fan meetup. Let's go be rowdy at the Terrace Club.
All right. Locked On Guardians meetup at the Terrace Club. I like it. It's fine. It's not, I can say it's, I mean, I've always thought about, like, oh, it'd be cool to go and try. And it was a lot less of a hassle than I thought it was going to be. You essentially just make a reservation, and it's more expensive just to, like, it's for dining. Like, you have to go and pay. It's like an all you can eat thing. I think in the past, it used to be a little fancier. They used to have like a more of a dining menu that you could select from, and they also had a buffet. Now I think because of how it's changed over the years, it was just like ballpark food plus like a little bit of extra fanfare. And there's obviously adult beverages. I know you don't partake, but that is a thing you can do there. I don't know. For me, I can say I don't want to say I'm old school, because I'm definitely not old school, but I do like to go to the game and watch the game, and I do like to be at the park to feel the ambiance of baseball. And I like to feel and hear everything going on. And when you're inside the glass, like, you don't hear the game. You're watching. I don't know if you can even hear it on TV, but you can only see the game. You can't hear it, and you can't experience everything. So it's fine. I definitely think everybody, if you can afford to, it's worth doing once just for the experience. It's a cool view. It's especially great in colder months and when there's rain. But other than that, I personally prefer just being around the ballpark. But I think it's really a good time for them to make the change, because when they did that, when they opened the ballpark, it was, like you said, it was unique. Nobody else had that. And I don't know if anybody does, but it's no longer part of what they're trying to go for in the ballpark. They renovated the right field area into the corner bar. They've incorporated a lot of city stuff locally for food and more social hangouts at the game. And I guess the Terrace Club is kind of a social hangout, but it's really not. It just kind of looks odd when you put it up against the rest of the ballpark. So I think it makes sense to transform it. From what I saw in the renderings, it looks like some of the area over there may still be enclosed. Like, there may still be some glass there and you could sit there. So I think that part is staying, like maybe some of it is, but overall the feel will change.
Looks like fancier seats. Like, it looks like almost like a cushioned seat, and there's like glass at the knee level. And then it looks like a lot of, I don't know, like, it looks like they're trying to do fancy, but also not. It looks very hodgepodgey to me. Like, they're trying to maintain old with new. We'll see how it looks. Like, it's weird in the pictures, honestly. And then, it's more this whole idea that, like, the standing room only, the local cuisine, and then, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Eventually, I think it'd be a tax write-off for us. I'm very, very intrigued by the dugout club. That looks like that could be a fun thing to also try once. This is the times where I miss my buddy who's when I went to high school, and his dad worked at First Energy, and we'd occasionally, like, I've been in a luxury box 3 times in my life, or on the floor. Like, I've been in the expensive seats 3 times. It was all because my high school buddy, his dad worked at First Energy. So when they got tickets, he'd call me. So that's the only time I've gotten to go do that. But I mean, this seems like interesting. It seems like a fun extension. I thought it was interesting as well that, was it Zach or someone pointed out that, like, there had been talk of, like, kind of changing the entire, like, press box area or doing something different with that. And that apparently has gone away. But they've got this. And then also that basically they're going to build a new building to have a sports book on the outside, because you can't have it on the inside, is the rule. And that they're also going to change some stuff. They're going to update all the front office stuff, so it can be even more cutting edge up there with what they're doing. Yeah,
they were supposed to do a lot of different things with the administration building, and they decided they couldn't, and they just decided to add a 5th floor and renovate in there. A lot of teams have also renovated their press boxes. Like, some of them have moved them to very poor locations. I want to say, like, the Cubs or the Orioles, their press box has gotten moved or something over the years, and or maybe it's the Angels, I can't remember, but it's not in a good location for writers anymore. And I know people are like, well, think of the fans first, but yeah. So I'm kind of glad the Guardians one press box isn't moving, but they could probably use some renovations in their press box too. I'm going to be honest, and some upgrades to their press dining. I know is a popular one among writers.
It is weird. I will say that you have to pay for food in the press box. That is one of those you don't hear at a lot of places. That is to dig into the nitty gritty. And I'm sure people out there like, hey, they get to go to the game for free. I mean, that's fine. But I'm just going to say, when you compare that even to the minor leagues, where food is provided for free, and then you go to the major leagues and you got to prepare and pay. It's a little different. And I understand it's a higher level of food too, but I've heard that complaint.
Yeah, and there's more people to feed at a major league press box than a minor league press box, I will say. Although you have, like, in Akron, they always feed us in Akron, but they also have their staff eating from that too. So it's not just us. For a lot of years too, Lake County would not do that. They would give you, like, a voucher card for that stuff, and then so you're not paying for food, but you're only getting like the concession stuff. But last year, Lake County brought back in press box. I know I'm being fancy hoity-toity and looking like a douche here, but they brought back in press box dining last year, which, by the way, you'll hear some captain's news tomorrow. That was the minor league team that we teased last week that was going to have some major announcement news tomorrow. So on Tuesday the 17th. So if you're listening to this, it might have already happened. And if not, tune in at 1:00. The captains will have some, I don't know, it'll be interesting news that will probably affect that sort of thing. So we shall find out. But I'm excited for the renovations, to be honest with you. I think
getting rid of the
shipping containers. Yeah, I know.
It's huge. That was, I mean, that's just, those were embarrassing. Let's be honest.
This is the important part, isn't it? Because remember the first original designs that came out of that? It was not supposed to look like that. No. And I feel like they either ran out of money or they just felt like they didn't have enough time to finish it. And they were just, all right, let's just put this up there and we'll be done. So now they're spending more money, unfortunately, to fix that issue. You know what I found interesting too? I like the sight lines. Like there's more standing room only coming to left field, which I like the upper deck third base area. There's more standing room to see the field. But you know what I'm interested in is that they're putting more seats back up into right field. So they're removing some seats from the left field area, like the third base overhang and the upper deck, I think. And they're going to put more seats back into up in the upper deck in right field where some of the shipping containers are. Obviously, they're going to take those out of the right field portion and renovate those to look better. But they're putting some seats back in like upper deck of right field. And I'm like, these are pretty bad seats in terms of like how they're angled and just their location. I'm like, why are you putting in? Putting back in seats might be not a bad idea considering how much they've taken out. Although they said that capacity isn't really going to change.
It's going to stay the same, yeah. So the moving of seats is just to maintain capacity, is what it seems like.
Right, but it's like, why pick that area to put seats back in? It's those seats are at a very bad angle, and they're in the worst location in the stadium. It's like, why choose that area to put seats back in? Like, put that as part of your standing room only bar section, and then find different ways to put the seats in. I know some of the seats are changing in the lower levels too, which is good. But I'm excited for it overall because look, it's going to look like a new ballpark without having to build a new ballpark, which was never going to happen. And it's important for them to update this sort of thing and make it look good. I think Progressive Field is one of the best looking ballparks in the sport. I mean, I've been to Camden, I've been to PNC. I'm trying to think where else I've been out there. It's kind of limited actually.
And the other thing to point out is like nothing has been decided about that parking deck yet. And I think if they're smart, they'll buy it. It's, it's not that expensive and it gives them more room to expand and do things. So, because they're kind of running out of room on that plot. Like we said, they're going to build a whole nother building on the side. It's going to be some of the storage from those storage containers, like some of what they're doing there. Plus it's probably going to be a sports book, which again, as long as it doesn't open into the stadium, they're allowed to do.
That's supposed to go out into East 9th. I think they're pushing
East 9th. Okay.
Yeah, the administration offices are just getting a renovation and getting an extra floor, I think. But the sports book, I think, is going to push out where there's like a new era hat store that's out there by East 9th. Yeah. That might turn into the sports book. And then, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, there's some talk of like expanding or building, but we'll see.
Well, the parking deck, I will say real quick before the parking deck, they have an option to buy that in a couple of years. I think a lot of that looks like it's if they're going to try to build like a ballpark village. That has to do with David Blitzer's involvement. So if they buy that, you're talking about knocking down a parking deck and then putting up like shops and restaurants and potentially, I don't know, apartments. I have no idea but that's kind of like what the Battery in Atlanta is. It's ballpark village. That's kind of what I think David Blitzer might be here for.
Agreed. We're going to be back in a moment. For all of you people who want to know more about prospects, international prospects, the Guardians have added a few. Remember, this is where the George Valeras came from of the world, where the Brian Rocchios, the next generation of top talent, as well as discussing MLB's top right-handed pitchers, which were Guardians heavy. But first, let's talk about our good friends over at BuiltBar.com. I know them. I love them. I've been having them for years. I remember their old design. Now we've got the new design. And listen, the ad copy wants us to talk about Walmart. You can go to Walmart, you can go to Sam's Club, and you can get their product. And it's great. If you don't want to, deal with shipping and handling and all that, go to Walmart. No, go to Walmart, go to Sam's Club, and get your Built Bar today. But right now, they still have a 15% off site-wide sale. So I also want to send you there because when they have a sale, then you can typically use the promo code LOCK15 and get another 15% off your order. And I highly recommend the 12 mixed box right now, or the 12 mixed puffs. I'm a big fan of the puffs. And what you need to know is a lot of these, it's like 140 calories, but 17 grams of protein and only 6 grams of sugar. They're good for you. They taste delicious. Whatever you like, you'll find a flavor for you over at Built Bar. So check out BuiltBar.com today, or go to Sam's Club or Walmart. And if you do go to BuiltBar.com, remember that promo code LOCK15. Welbyn Francisco, right? That's the big name of this group. It feels like it. It's interesting if you go to MLB.com. Every single player in this top 50 has already been signed, except for Tony Ruiz, where I'm like, what's going on there? I think the thought I've read today is that he's probably going to end up with the Red Sox. But yeah, I mean, these deals are done before months, maybe years ahead of time. If they wanted to nail teams with fines for making these deals done, Welbyn Francisco has been wearing primarily Guardian stuff since he was like 14, and he's 17 right now. So 16, obviously he's been connected to this organization for a while. What does your scouting report say on the very, very young man they have let him?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to go off. Mostly just reading MLB Pipeline, which Jesse Sanchez does a great job. MLB Pipeline, and then obviously Ben Badler, Baseball America. By the way, I highly recommend, if you have the funds to do so, or to subscribe to Baseball America. Those guys do a fantastic job, especially on fronts like this. So the Guardians, though, had about a little, let's say $5.8 million to spend, a little over that and some change. So they spent $1.3 million and some change on Welbyn Francisca. They spent $850,000 on Yerlin Luis, and then the rest of it was kind of spread around. But I don't know. It sounds like initially I read on Francisca, it sounded like most people project him to be a second baseman. But
yes,
now I've seen that he has added some strength. He's kind of growing into his body, which is only 16. There's a lot going on here. He can get bigger, he can get stronger, he could get too big. I mean, who knows? A lot of things could happen. But it sounds like he has a good frame. But it sounds like his arm and his run times have gotten better. So good chance he can stick it short. People really like. Again, this is another shortstop who.
Switch hitter,
switch hitter who can make a lot of contact, has speed. It's the same kind of.
For those who were curious about the rank,
it's a typical Guardians international signing in terms of middle infielders. He can stay up the middle. He might add some power. He has bat to ball skills. He has speed. He can play defense. If he ends up at second, he'll be fine. People think that his bat will come along pretty nicely. So. That was the prized guy in this class. Important to remember, too, though. I know you know this. Cleveland's had a lot of success with players that haven't been the top guy in their class. I mean,
the top guys almost always fallen short.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Bradshaw got a ton of money. That hasn't gone well. But other guys in this class like Valera, Noel, Rocchio, obviously, those are big names, too. But they have all done much better than him. And then even the class after that, Gabriel Rodriguez was their top guy. And until 2021 or 2022, he hadn't really been going anywhere. It took him a little bit longer.
Still the highest signing bonus I believe they've had internationally.
Yeah, for a position player. Just if you want to count Danny's Baez is the top one ever. But
Welbyn, I was listening, I was pulling things up. I do want to point out, people are like, what? That sounds really impressive. Why is he only like 28th in the class? He is 5'8". He is a slight guy. Height issues are still something that in traditional scouting stands out. That is something that people still have issues with. And like, he's more like, again, take it with the grainiest of salts, but like the scouting grades on him projected to be kind of just average at everything other than hit. That is definitely, so, we'll have to see how it progresses. He's 16. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, he's got him having average power while being 5'8" is kind of a miracle to even list him at that, just due to his size and the height stuff. So I think I said weight instead of height, but he's the first one. They've got two more guys who kind of signed for significant amounts of money. Should I queue you up for, let's see, I'm trying to find out where he is in the ranks. There he is.
Was he ranked? Was he
37th? Yeah. Yerlin Luis is 37th.
Mm-hmm.
He is the second biggest bonus. Center fielder, very much another. If we read the scouting report, I guess, do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. I mean, neither one of us really have. Yeah, neither one of us have like an in-depth scouting report on these 16-year-olds from the Dominican Republic, but we're just kind of reading off of these because we haven't had a chance to see it other than like Instagram video that exists out there. But yeah, another guy who could stick in center field and has some room to grow, contact. I think it sounds like he might have a chance to have a little more pop than Francisca. It sounds like he makes a little more hard contact at his age. I mean, who knows? Again, Francisca could grow, and it could be a thing where
like he's got a bit of an uppercut, like a small uppercut was what.
Yeah, and I think he just makes a little more hard contact at this age right now. So we'll see how that grows. But yeah, bat to ball skills, speed, center fielder. I'm excited to see him. I know it'll be a couple of years before we do.
Undersized switch hitter. A lot of similarities between him and Francisco. And then the only other guys to get big money, I'll mention MLB has like guys who signed for over 300,000. That's kind of a separator. Jonathan Martinez, infielder from the Dominican Republic for 300. Juan Francis, outfielder from Venezuela for 320. Jose Perella, outfielder from Venezuela for 320. Luis Merajo, infielder, Dominican Republic for 340. And yes, I butchered all of their names, so go ahead and let me know in the comments below how bad I did. And then the other big name guy relative to everything is Jose Marcano, an infielder from Venezuela who got 800,000. He is another kind of bread and butter Guardians infield type from what I have read.
Yeah, the two guys I think I heard that kind of stood out of them in that group were Marcano and Jose Perella. And I'm also interested to see if Jose Perella is like related to the former Yankees and Pirates prospect. Remember who I'm talking about? He was like a 5'9" outfielder. He was supposed to be a top prospect and he never really panned out. I wonder if there's any relation there. But those are the two guys I've seen kind of like talked about the most among the group that didn't get the highest bonuses and that I didn't see in the rankings as high. So we're talking about kids that are like 5 years away from being a year away at this point.
So yeah, Jose Perella was from Valera, Venezuela. So not the same hometown. So
how old is all I can do. Is he old enough to have a 16-year-old kid?
Yeah, I mean,
reasonably.
Yes, I mean he's 33. So yes, but he would have been pretty young there, and spending a lot of time stateside during those times. So yeah, he got to the big leagues. Had 985 plate appearances over 300 games. So good on the other Jose Perella.
Oh, he did make it.
Yeah,
okay.
Played a bunch of random positions, but yeah. I was going to say I'm kind of bouncing around through all my tabs. It just, and then like I said, with Marcona, who got the other like big bonus, another sub 6 foot guy, knows how to, good eye at the plate, not a lot of power. If you've heard this before, I am not surprised. And then I think my favorite. Go ahead.
I was going to say it sounds like just from reading that Luis might have the most projected power of any of the guys they signed. That sounds like everyone feels like he has the best chance to add. I don't want to say significant power, but I
don't think anyone projects his plus. Let's put it that way. You're hoping for 55 grade, and that would be that they're not going for. Yeah, and then looking at baseball America, I love the fact I've brought it up on the show. They love Venezuelan catchers. They signed 4 catchers, 3 of them from Venezuela. So. That little stat I brought up before, and I can't remember about what, but I was talking about like Victor Martinez, Venezuelan catcher, and then there are all these Venezuelan catchers in the system. Well, they just added 3 more. So there apparently is something there in the water. But
and 2 out of Panama.
Yeah, 2 from the same area.
That's interesting.
We're going to end our audio only show for this point. Oh, I guess not audio only. It's audio and video at all times. We're going to go to the video only component, talk about the MLB.com top 10 right-handers in baseball, which also focuses on top pitchers. So join us for that part. Thank you to Cleveland Tex for the review. 4 out of 5 stars is still very good. Glad he calls us, in fairness, he called us very informative, the most informative place for it. We're just dry. which I mean, I can own on that. I'm more of a professor type than a screamer type. I can't do morning radio. It's just, that's never going to work. I was always going to be a straight man. But thank you to those who rate and review. The comment section, we're very heavy on YouTube. I'm going to a lot of catching up to do. So thank you to everyone there. And go Guardians, go. Okay, it's unfortunate because we both looked at this list, so there's no point in us having a fun guessing game. Were you a little surprised about Andrew Painter 1? I found that, I mean, just because Grayson Rodriguez is so close, and not to say that Painter isn't good, but that felt a little bit like the flavor of the week, having him jump that high on the list.
No, I feel like Painter's been talked about over the last year as the top guy. I mean, Grayson Rodriguez also had an injury last season too. Remember, he came back late in the year and he was fine. I think Grayson's really good. You could argue either way, but Painter had a good year last year. I think people think that Painter is going to be ready for a big league jump this year too. So
I expected them to be flipped. That's all. It's not like I'm saying, oh, Painter didn't deserve to be that high. I mean, I know Rodriguez had his injury, but he had been just so dominant and been the pitching prospect for a little bit of time to me. And then I thought it's kind of interesting, Espino, in spite of his injury. Taj Bradley is really interesting, but kind of a guy that gets overlooked. Bobby Miller has the performance, but the production hasn't been there. Gavin Williams had that great year. We've talked about Hunter Brown. Gavin Stone, we were talking about last week, the whole idea of like what teams
sleepers.
That's another one. Like he didn't even get 100,000 when he signed. Just like Tony Gosselin, they do a really good job with those types. And
I think the 10. Interesting
Micah Bell at 9 after the year he had was kind of surprising to me. That's the only one where I'm like, really?
I still think it's interesting that, well, he's listed at 2024, but look at the ETAs on here. All the guys on this list are ETA 2023. I think that's interesting considering Espino has to be added at the end of the year, 40-man wise, but Gavin's got another year. So interesting.
I don't think he sniffs the big leagues this year. I got to be honest.
It depends. I mean, can Cleveland even clear us? Maybe he could, but can Cleveland clear a spot to bring him up where it makes sense? Like we have to address this at some point because I've been going through trying to create pitching depth charts, and there are like 8-9 guys that should, like, Bieber, Espino. I guess you could start Espino in AA, but Williams, Cantillo, Bieber, the guys on the 40 plus Peyton Battenfield and Logan Allen, all should be at Columbus. You don't have enough room for those guys. You got to get through that list before you can even talk about adding, a Gavin Williams to your 40-man roster and Daniel Espino. Like, they have to clear out a lot of space to get to these guys, which is wild.
Don't you have to add? I mean, Espino, you have to add. Don't you also have to add Logan Allen at the end of the year?
Yep, Logan Allen.
Yeah, so it's like both those guys have to get opportunities before Williams or Bieber, and
Bieber's the most ready, probably.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's why I think Williams isn't going to sniff the big leagues this year. I think there's too much. Because here's I did a crossover, not crossover. I did a show with Zach and Chuck over from, I'm blanking on their podcast. I should give it a proper shout out. Sorry guys, if you're listening, I'm a dick. At the corner podcast. I know Zach and Chuck, but at the corner podcast. And I was talking about that. Like, I think it just, there hasn't been a deal that makes sense to go out and trade everyone. I mean, yeah, Sean Murphy would have made perfect sense, but you can't control what Oakland liked, and Oakland liked what they liked, and they really wanted Estuary Ruiz, and you can't control that. But there haven't been actually a ton of trades, so it's like it's hard for them. I think Curry and Gaddis could both be great relievers. I think they have a lot of ways to go about stuff. I would have, loved a lesser deal, like if they could have convinced Arizona to take a reliever in another piece, or figuring out. But they've got to figure something out. It's going to be hard to figure out time for all of these guys to get a real view, and that's the real killer. It's like they, you and I discussed on this show. It's like they didn't trade Nolan Jones to trade Nolan Jones. They really liked Juan Brito. They didn't. But like Owen Miller, their hand was forced. Richie Palacios, their hand is going to get forced sooner rather than later with him. Like having all of these players but not having reps for them, it's kind of like, it's paralysis. They're going to lose. They don't want to make that trade where they trade a guy and it comes back to bite them in the backside. But eventually they're going to have to release guys who could come back and bite them in the backside because they haven't cleared a spot or given that extended look that they need to know. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting with Williams because I don't think there's any chance he pitches up there this year unless there's a massive string of injuries or this team is really bad and they start trading guys.
Yeah, or they just find trades for guys they don't want to hang on to. But we're in it's January 16th as we're talking, and they haven't found a trade for Zach Plesac, who's been in some rumors, and they, Aaron Civale hasn't been mentioned either, but I'm sure they would consider moving him maybe if they're in the right deal. Is there a trade out there? I'm wondering, because we're talking about clearing spots. Is there a trade? Is there a player out there that would make you be willing to give up one of the big three? Is there a player now we're talking about, like, let's be realistic, a team that's going to trade that may trade a player of this ilk. Like, I'm thinking like, okay, the Red Sox probably this year at some point are going to have to move some pieces. I don't know if they have any. Cleveland's going to be interested in, but like, let's think about teams who might be trading sometime this summer. Is there a player out there that you think that might be available that would be worth trading one of the big three for?
Zach Gallen. I know his name comes up, and I don't know if he's ever really been formally on the block, but you get what he's just arbitration eligible for the first time. You get him through 23, 24, and 25. He's not a free agent until 26, and he's already 27, so he's not going to hit free agency until 30. He's an undersized righty. He hasn't pitched a ton of innings, which is partially because of like COVID and partially just not the opportunities, like because he was undersized, he was always doubted. It's not like he's had an injury risk with him, but I think, it's like he's already done it and he's been really good. And listen, he's going to come to earth next year.
The Diamondbacks going to be are the Diamondbacks going to compete to the point where they're not going to trade Zach Gallen? Like, that's the question. Like, is Arizona going to be in the race enough? Because I don't know, the Dodgers, they have a good farm system. They should realistically win the West. The Padres obviously are still fantastic. The Giants stink. The Rockies stink. The Rockies, this is hilarious. I was watching MLB Network the other day, and the Colorado Rockies were listed as their big offseason addition was listed as Nolan Jones. And not to belittle Nolan Jones, but I thought that was hilarious because I was like, wow, that was the Rockies' most significant move this offseason was adding Nolan Jones. Like, that's kind of sad. So I don't know if you heard me because you had a quick screen freeze, but
no, I was just like,
do you think Arizona will be in a position to trade him?
I mean, they've got young arms coming up. I don't know if they'd be in a position to trade him, but if they're bad, I mean, it's hard to find that match of like that truly awful team with like it's like, I mean, Sandy Alcantara. Like, if Florida is really like, if they'd be willing to move him instead of one of those other pieces, he's got such a team friendly contract that that's the situation where you're like, okay, I'm gonna give them Espino who could maybe end up being just as good or something like that plus more pieces. But yeah, I don't know if Arizona. I like Arizona quite a bit, so I'm probably betting they're going to actually be better than people think. But yeah, it's got to be something like that. It's got to be like 3 years of plus control if I'm going to move a big three.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at the rosters and I'm like, okay, nobody in AL East besides the Red Sox looks like a seller. At some point they will be. Nobody in the West is probably selling. The Angels, everybody in the West is the Athletics have nothing left to sell. And the rest of the teams are all trying to compete. You're not going to make a trade in division. There's nobody in the NL East.
Tarek Skubal would be interesting if he could show health, like a return to last year's form with his control. Like, if they would
three?
I mean, what he was doing last year before the injury, I mean, he looked like one of the 5 best lefties in baseball last year at one point.
Oof. I don't know if I can look at that body of work and the fact that he's
again. I'm saying if he can come back and show what he showed before, but
yeah, that would be a big stretch for me to say you should trade one of the big three for him. I know he was having a fantastic year, but I have some doubts there. But I cannot see Cleveland offering Espino or Williams or Bieber to the Tigers and letting that come back to haunt them for years. So I don't see that happening. The Nationals and the Marlins are the two teams that would possibly sell in the East. The Nationals have nothing to sell. I mean, I don't think Steven Strasburg is magically going to do the Benjamin Button and de-age 10 years and look great again. The Reds have nothing to sell. The Pirates have no pitching to sell. Everybody else in that division is trying to build up. It's a limited group. What about Chris Sale? Obviously, you're probably not giving up one of the big three for him.
No, it's a lot of money. I mean, I don't know how much is still owed, and it's like,
well, what if the Red Sox are paying a chunk of that money to get prospects? That seems like something they might do. But he's pitched 44 innings the last 2 years. I'm sorry, 47 innings.
47 innings. That's the other issue. Like that's the bigger issue to me. And like last year,
and he's 33.
I'm not giving a big three even if they pay it all. And it's your pay. It's 2 years left at big money. It's just he's not. And there was no Chris Sale for me. It's the chickens or whatever have come home to roost. The health is just it's not there. It's hard to find a match. It's honestly hard to find a match. It's almost like you would have to do something piecemeal, which is a weird thought process. But it's like, if you're going to trade someone like John Schreiber, who's like one of the best relievers in baseball a year ago, and they get like. But then, like, Verdugo hasn't been good enough. It's like you look at, a top-end reliever and a good outfielder instead of an excellent one. Or something. And I don't love that. I don't love splitting value on something. But it's hard. It's hard to find a match that makes sense. Here, I'll throw one to you. I think I got an interesting way. The player I would consider one of the big three for would be Nathan Lowe. And you're getting him. He's only got 2 years of service time. You get him through 2026. You look at how good he was a year ago. He's gotten better every year. I know Texas wants to contend, but they have a ton of hitting prospects that are getting close. And I mean, Owen White, Cole Winn, they drafted Brock Porter, Kumar Rocker, but they've always had a harder time with pitching than hitting. So maybe that's a world where they would consider it. And I feel like it's probably an overpay still. Like, I don't know how you make it work, but like Nathan Lowe would at least be an interesting guy. Like, I know he's another Josh Naylor, but he did it better than Naylor a year ago. No offense to Naylor. They were both awesome, but then it doesn't make as much sense when you still got Josh Bell here. So maybe it's like something you consider in a year, but I don't know. Nathan Lowe would be an interesting player.
I could see that.
Get Jonah Heim while you're at it and just,
get your backup catcher spot. Yeah. And maybe you can even do some prospect for prospect exchanges too, because I like their system quite a bit, and Cleveland could use some corner help and some other stuff. I don't know. So the odds are pretty low Cleveland's going to deal one of the big three, and I know Jim Callis, we were talking about the top right-handed pitching prospects for the top 10 on MLB Pipeline. I saw Jim Callis tweet that Bieber just missed as well. So almost 3 Cleveland arms in the top 10. And that's all baseball. We're talking about the big three in Cleveland. This is why you and I keep, this is what you're the one who started it, but that's why we keep saying it's the big three, because, this is the big three in the Guardian system, but they were, I would venture to guess that if that list was extended to top 15, Bieber would be in there. So you're talking about,
I think if they went to 11, there's a good chance he makes it.
Yeah, well, they mentioned Tink Hence at the end of the article, not Bieber, so I would guess Tink Hence is 11, but 12 through 15, one of those would be Bieber for sure. So you're talking about three out of possibly 12 to 15 of the right-handers in baseball are in Cleveland pitching prospects.
And again, Mick Abel, I feel like, is on there. He was really unimpressive in AA this past. I mean, he was okay in AA, but the walk rate's a little high. He was not great in high A. He didn't that struck me as, again, he's got good stuff. The production hasn't been there, but like that struck me as more like, hey, he was a top 20 pick recently, like, which happens sometimes on MLB. Again, they have an impossible job that they do. They're covering as much as they do. So Don't sit back and say you're hating on them. It's an impossible job. And sometimes guys make it in who are kind of more legacy types. Top tools. Where does Cleveland? Espino had the best fastball at an 80 grade.
That's for someone to get an 80 grade fastball. Like last time I remember someone getting an 80 grade fastball was like a Aroldis Chapman.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
You're saying Hall of Fame level. Curveball, Hunter Brown at a 65. That's been kind of his pitch. Slider, Espino at a 70, which is kind of crazy to think about. So that we know Cleveland has sliders, and that Espino is. I mean, that's why if he can stay healthy, he's just going to be a horse. In terms of he's a unicorn, there's nothing quite like him. And then if he can't stay healthy, him and Clase are gonna potentially battle for the top reliever in baseball for the next decade if he can't. Like I want him to start, don't get me wrong, but then there's this nice feeling of like, imagine Clase setting up or Espino setting up Clase. Like the game is over after the 7th inning. Like it's done.
And that could happen this year if they want to bring him along that way.
Stefan in the 7th. I mean, 99 coming out in the 6th with like Sam Henches. I mean, I'm just gonna fan myself.
Where will Brian Shaw pitch in that grouping though? That's
Senior League. Senior League.
I'm telling you, Brian Shaw. He's going to show up in Arizona. He's going to start throwing bullpens. And he's going to be thrown to like, Mabrys Valoria, Cam Gallagher, and Chris Santana's going to walk over and be like, is that Brian Shaw? He's going to be like, yeah, he's been on this team forever, right? And Chris will ask Mike, turn off and be like, did we sign Brian Shaw? And Mike's like, yeah, probably. So here he is. That'll happen.
Espino also made most to prove with like we talked about the health issues, and then like closer, starter. Like I said, unless he somehow like hit the arm literally falls off, it's hard to see him not being an impact player as either a starter or a closer. A bullpen weapon, potentially. Like he could be that future bullpen guy. Like wasn't Chris Devanski supposed to be that, like the multi-inning high leverage reliever? Like that could be Espino if he doesn't hold up. But it's like we talked about all that. It's like what happens if Cody Morris doesn't hold up? And it's like, my goodness, it's like it is really like it's getting warm. Like they have so many, and that's why again I know people get mad at us, but like during the season, like when teams have bullpen needs, we'll discuss trading 99, and the reason we discuss him in particular is because he's got the least control. Like that, Clase is locked up. Stefan and Henches aren't in arbitration. Like if 99 is super effective again, they have so many weapons that it's just going to be, hey, when we saw how outrageous the market was to pay high-end relievers. So it's also the nice thing.
What are you getting back? What are you getting back? Like here, I understand that, but like if you're trading Karinchak because he has value and he's lacking control, literally and figuratively, if you talk about pitching and his team control. And does he fill one of your major league needs? Like, okay, because in theory, you're talking about moving him to a team that probably needs relief help in major league season, right? So what is that major league team going to give Cleveland back? And also, they don't have room for prospects. Like, I understand your point, and I agree with it, but what can they possibly get back that makes sense? You have to either get a prospect that doesn't need to be added this offseason or and that's also a gamble. You're talking about a guy that's 2 years away. You're talking a gamble on moving a guy with that much value.
What I wonder about is someone like Miami. Like, could there be something where that gets you part of the way to a Luzardo trade? It's like, does 99 plus Brennan get you Luzardo? It might. It honestly might.
I hate the idea of giving up Brendan, but you're right. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like,
this would be.
Or is it like, okay, so, I mean, they've kind of set their infield. They need that outfielder. It's like, 90, 99. And I know some people, like I saw our comments where people debating Luzardo recently. It's like, fine. Does Lopez, like if you're a believer in him, or, maybe you can get, Cabrera or even Perez, their top pitching prospect, who's the number 3 guy for 99 plus a piece. So it's like that's, Arizona needs relief help. Like you're not getting Corbin Carroll, you're not getting Christian Walker, but like if guys perform, like could you get an outfielder out of them? If so, if Joe McCarthy does what he did last year, do you start to become a believer? If Alec Thomas, who was up for the Gold Glove, rebounds offensively, is he becomes someone interesting? Especially, could you do a 3-team deal? Like, could it be something like could you flip 99 to Arizona for something like Alec Thomas that then gets flipped to Miami as a different set of deals to get you a reliever? It's like that. I think, and again, the only reason I bring this up is because right now, relief pitching, like I said, I'm getting all hot and bothered thinking about Clase and Morris back there, or not Clase, thinking about Espino and Morris back there. They have just that's the depth. That is the strongest point on the entire team. And I know someone will say, well, then why would you want to break up the strongest point? Because it's so unbelievably strong. Where like one can make a case that 99 is their third or fourth best reliever. And he was awesome last year. And it just, you have, and that was a position of such teams spent on that position this offseason. So him making 1.5 just makes him so much more valuable.
That's true. He's incredibly cheap. And that's what I was going to bring up too. I'm glad you said that. How incredibly well did this work out for Cleveland? Not only that, remember when everybody was like up in arms about the Kluber trade, like, oh, they only got a reliever and they got Delano Shields. And Delano Shields was horrid to watch, obviously. No offense.
He was a salary balance. He was a salary balance. Let's be honest.
But
he was, and they didn't have, and then also like how far have they come where like he was there because they need to balance salary because Texas was taking Kluber, but he still was the primary center fielder because they didn't have a better option.
It was bad. It was bad. But
yeah, it was bad.
Remember how up in arms everybody was about that trade? Like, oh, they came up.
I was
Kluber
one.
And
I was one.
Yeah. Well, the thing people had to remember is when they were giving up 2020 and 2019 Kluber, they weren't giving up 2017, 2016 Kluber. People, I think, forgot that a lot. But nobody, I think, had an idea Clase was going to do this. Maybe Cleveland did. Obviously, they felt like they had a lot in him. But how incredibly well did that work out that they got Clase in that deal? They got him to sign that team-friendly extension, and then Karinchak ends up being the setup guy, which means he's not making all that arbitration money based off saves. Because if it goes the other way, point. Right? If he has to be if he is forced to be the team's closer, which is a little scary because of his walk totals. So that's another thing to think about. But they would have had to pay him in arbitration more money because saves are what pays in arbitration, not holds, which is stupid. It's that part of that system is still backwards, but that worked out incredibly well for Cleveland. That he has been stuck. Not I'm going to say stuck because it's important, but he has been resigned to a setup role because of Clase, and that contract also prevents Clase from making buku dollars in the arbitration market as well.
And how much do we think? I think honestly, like, listen, I was talking about it like 2 years ago with like how saves increase. We all know that saves drive that market. Cleveland, Clase was the first guy that they re-up last year. And how much do we think that was? Because they're like, okay, he's going to be the closer. Saves are the only, like, we will save so much money giving him an extension if he's willing to sign it, because then we take all the saves out of arbitration. We have this great young pen that's going to be hitting arbitration at various times. Of course, we didn't know it was going to be a great young pen a year ago. Everyone was a question mark outside of Clase, which is also part of the reason. But when you lock up the guy who's getting saves, it depresses the rest of your value for that bullpen for everyone else. It's interesting market manipulation and salary manipulation, but I feel like they probably consider that when they looked at giving him that extension, that no matter what you give him, it's going to save you money overall.
Yeah, and I'm not sitting here trying to excuse not paying players. I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying.
I think you have to admit it's what happens.
Yeah, no, it is for sure. It was a good business move for Cleveland, and it wasn't a bad business move for Clase. Like what was that deal? Was it $25 million for like 5 years, and it could have gone? It can go to 7 with like, I don't know what it can get up to, but
I think it's 7 and 9. I don't even think it cracks 10 million.
Yeah, so he gets some security, obviously, which is good, especially for relievers, high octane relievers, and how they age. That's dangerous. So he does get some security,
and he lost out on that money due to his suspension for performance enhancing, which could affect him in like arbitration. And so that is on his record.
That's a great point too. Yeah. So it's a good business move for Cleveland. I'm not saying it's good that players are getting paid less. Definitely, I'm definitely in favor of paying players everything they're worth because they're the reason people watch and the reason teams win. But I will say for like Antonetti and for Chernoff and those guys, given the financials they are given to work with, it was a fantastic move for them and it worked out great. And now, like you said, Karinchak is is very affordable in terms of trades. And if Morris and Morgan and Henches and Stefan and Espino and whoever else from that minor leagues can emerge in the bullpen, if you can move a guy like him and fill some of their needs. I don't know if that what exists out there to fill the needs, but if you can do that, it makes a ton of sense. I'll be curious to see how it develops throughout the year. I had another money rant I wanted to talk about, but we're pushing up against an hour now. So I'll just say, if you haven't seen the video reaction from the Orioles owner to a question about the future of the Orioles and the ownership and their TV rights dispute, those people should just stop talking to the media, because nothing ever good comes out of their mouths. So their PR people should just say, you know what, you put your foot in your mouth every time you talk to the media. Just stop it. And I think the media should have access to them, because there are organizations that are not, like Boston hasn't had their owner in front of the media in like 4 years. And I think the athletic writer who asked the questions to the Baltimore owner said, this is like the second time in 4 years we've had access to talk to you, so I'm going to bring this up. But his reaction was so uncalled for, and it could have been, hey, let's talk about that later, off the stage. Let's focus on this now. Instead, he went to a 5-minute tirade, and it was embarrassing. And the people with all that money just seem like they don't know how to talk to people. They lack the money inundates them from just speaking like a reasonable person. Sometimes it feels like
the son of the Reds owner, who's the president, for second year in a row, made himself look like a moron. And then you just go back to like when we had the COVID season, and Oakland pretty much the Oakland ownership group had to be shamed into paying their minor leaguers. Basically, everyone else agreed to, and all of a sudden Oakland's like, oh, okay, we will. So it's a lot of billionaires that, I don't. And here's the thing, like the Reds one, I have to say that his comment was, we have to run the Reds like a nonprofit. So if that is the case, when his family eventually sells this team, just like, in the last 20 years, the Dolans are going to get $1 billion when they sell the Guardians, not to mention however much money they made year to year, not to mention the money they made when for 2 years they created a cable company and then sold that off with the rights. Even if they did lose money, at the end of the day, they're going to have made $1 billion on a under 20-year investment. So if the Reds are a nonprofit, when they sell the team, any profit they make from that should have to go to charity, because they're a nonprofit. So then they have to be 100% that way. If you're going to, it's so disingenuous. It's so full of poop, the way this stuff gets phrased. And it makes me irate, and it should make you irate.
He said that the Major League Baseball was in a dire situation.
And I think how many billion this year?
It was a record. It was like a record setting year financially for them. Dire situation. I would love to be in a dire situation financially where I make billions of dollars a year. That seems dire. I can only afford 4 Lamborghinis instead of 6. Yeah. Darn.
Yeah, he brought a slideshow that declared there had been a 75% increase since 2019 in teams that are out of contention on opening day. He used Fangraph's playoff probability for his definition. His criteria listed teams as having a 25% chance or less of reaching the playoffs. The Reds were one of those teams, saying like, oh, it's harder to do it. It's like, no, it's easier because there's more playoff teams and more people making it than ever. And I mean, this guy for the Reds is just, he is special.
You know how you don't fall out of contention on opening day? You acquire good players. That's pretty easy. You want to be in contention on opening day? Have a good team. Acquire players. It's also possible. People do it every year.
The Reds sold out.
How's that for your emotion?
They really, I mean, they did a lot of, they sold away a lot of prospects to get that small window where they made the postseason because they were bad. Like that front office has had a lot of failed draft picks and a lot of failed high draft picks. And we'll see if they can rebound. They have an interesting system and, have got a chance to improve moving forward. But like, part of the reason they've been bad is because people at the top weren't doing their jobs that well. And like, that's where you have to be thankful again to be a Cleveland Guardians fan, because this front office just, Gavin Williams was viewed as a bit of an overdraft, just a bit, not like a terrible one, but slight, and how good he is. Tanner Bybee thought the Cubs were going to draft him twice. We got that from an interview, and Cleveland instead got him in the 5th round. Emmanuel Clase for Corey Kluber, they got roasted for. They got roasted for the Lindor deal. They got roasted for the Clevenger deal. And, Cody Morris, who we talked about on the show, is another one of those rags to riches stories. So be thankful every single time. Listen, Larry Dolan has put his foot in his mouth many times, and that's why I feel like he doesn't get out and speak anymore ever. After the Real Fans by Press Box stuff was the last time I think we saw him. But the one thing I always say is this is not a Dan Gilbert. This is not a Jimmy Haslam. The one thing you can always say, and the thing I will always be thankful when the Dolan sell is he knew he had smart people and he got the heck out of the way.
Amen.
There's a lot of value in that. We went extra long, so
hope you enjoyed.
Comment below your favorite part. Should we be rantier? Should we just sit here and rip on billionaires for the next episode? We'll talk about tomorrow's the top left-handed pitchers on the MLB, so we'll discuss that. We'll talk about the big announcement down in the minors. We'll have some more data on that, maybe some ownership stuff to discuss. I think we can safely say has snuck its way out. But yeah, it's going to be a fun show. Make sure to tune in, rate and review, download daily. It helps. Subscribe on the YouTube and like the show. Let an ad play for 30 seconds if you got the time. We'd appreciate that. And go Guardians, go.